Do you ever get that one photo that you think looks absolutely perfect, but the one thing that doesn't look quite right is the sky, and you just wish you could get rid of it? Well, today we're looking at how we can fix that and how you can replace skies in all of your photos in Photoshop. Does that sound good? Roll the intro. What's up team, my name is Mark and welcome back to Making Instagram Bangers, the series where I teach you all the tips and tricks that I use to shoot and edit my photos. Today we're going to be looking at a couple of different tricks to do sky replacements straight in Photoshop. We're going to turn this photo right here into this photo right here, this one into this one, and this one into this one. So I'm not necessarily saying that these original photos were bad by any stretch, but sometimes I like to go just the extra mile on those photos to make sure they're absolutely perfect and just the way I like them. And it often happens that you're taking photos and most of it looks really, really good, but the sky for whatever reason that day was just boring or plain. Well, today we're going to fix that. Okay, so I'll be going through a couple of images that I've edited just so I can show you the different techniques that I use and hopefully you can learn something new. Let's jump right into it. Okay, so we're in Lightroom right now and I really like this photo. This was taken in Cambodia. However, the sky I feel is a little bit basic. So what I'm going to do is go to Photo, Edit in Adobe Photoshop. Okay, so now we're in Photoshop and the first step is to bring in some skies. Now, you can find heaps of sources of clouds online. Just type cloud overlay or sky overlay or something like that. There's hundreds of free resources out there. If not, there's some versions you can buy as well. I've got a couple of gigs of clouds that I use on a regular basis, some of which are mine from previous photos, some of which I've downloaded. So have a look online, see what you can find, and if you've got some really cool cloud photos, use those. And back to the edit. Okay, so first step is going to be to bring in my clouds. Now, for this photo, I've selected these clouds here because I reckon they look pretty good with the overall tone of the photo. So I'm just going to drag it up a little bit to where it needs to be, somewhere around here. There we go. And the next step is going to be to mask these clouds. So what I'm going to do is make this transparent for now, click on the first layer and grab the selection tool. I'm just going to brush over this top area here, just create a basic selection of what it should be. I'm going to hit select and mask. I might add a little bit of feather just to make sure it's smooth and we don't have too many sharp edges. Gonna hit OK. Now if I click back on the first layer and I hit the add layer mask button in the bottom right corner, there we go, that's already looking much better. So one quick tip here is just to untick this option here, which means that when you move the clouds, it's just the clouds moving and not the actual mask. So I might bring them up a little bit, just because I want that nice fade from bottom to top, something like that. So that already looks pretty good, but I feel like I could play with the colors a little bit just so it blends in a little bit nicer. Now, the colors in the original photo are slightly faded, so I'm gonna go with that. So I'm just gonna add a adjustment layer, hue saturation, there we go. I might bring the saturation down slightly and push the lightness up. So as you may have noticed, this applies to the whole image. So what I'm going to do is hold down the options key and click here, which means that now this applies only to the sky layer. So there we go, something like that. I might add a photo filter layer. So this is a warming filter, same thing. I'm just going to make sure it applies only to that layer here. And I might bring the density down just a little bit. There we go, so it's not too harsh. Okay, so if I look at the before and the after, there we go, it blends in quite smoothly. I'm really happy with that. I might play a little bit more. Let's see if I can maybe bring the lightness down actually. There we go. Yeah, I reckon that looks a little bit better. So it's all about playing, going back and forth and making sure that it blends in nicely. It's one of those tricks where if the sky doesn't blend in nicely, you can easily tell that it's fake. So if we look at the before and the after, I reckon that looks pretty good. I'm quite happy with that. So I'm just gonna hit save, and this is gonna save the photo into Lightroom. Okay, so the photo is now back in Lightroom. We can make some final adjustments if we want. So I might bump the contrast up a little bit, and I'm just gonna resize it for Instagram. There we go, something like that. Looks pretty good. The horizon isn't flat, but we can easily fix that. There we go, much better. Super easy, that looks really good. I'm really happy with that. Okay, next photo. Now the trouble with this photo is the whole day was pretty grey. We didn't have a lot of sun, which meant that a lot of the shots turned out a little bit desaturated, a little bit bland, and so this was one of the moments where we did actually get a little bit of sun, but there was a lot of clouds, so the sky is quite grey, quite desaturated, so I really wanted to do something here to improve the sky. So same thing, I'm going to go photo, edit in Adobe Photoshop, and we can get to work. Alright, so we're in Photoshop. Now, same thing goes, I'm just going to grab the clouds that I want to use. So for this photo, I've got these clouds here, which look quite similar to the previous ones that were already in the photo. I'm going to drag it to the top, and now, there we go, that looks pretty good. And now we're going to have to create a selection. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And for this photo here, I'm going to use a different tool now because the sky is really pale and we've got a lot of detail here. If we try to make a manual selection, it wouldn't work really well because you've got too much detail, there's too much action going on here. Thankfully, there's a tool that's really useful in this scenario. I'm going to zoom out a little bit just so I can show you. I'm going to hit select, color range, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on the plus button here and just select a couple of areas in the sky. And what this is going to do is basically telling Photoshop, look for all colors that resemble the ones I've selected. Now in this scenario, because the bottom is very green and the top is very white, it's really easy for Photoshop to detect all of those edges and find what we're looking for. So this works really, really well. Now I can adjust the fuzziness at the top, which basically shows me what's being selected. So anything in white here is what's being selected, what's in black isn't. And so you can already see that it's really good at selecting all around these edges quite nicely, and also within the trees. So these areas here, which would have been really, really complicated to manually select or brush. So this works really well. So I'm just going to push the fuzziness up. See, if I push it up too much, I'm actually selecting the bottom part of the image, which I don't want. So I'm going to keep it around, let's say 82, that should be fine. Obviously this changes for each image. I'm going to hit OK. Now I'm going to select the top image again and hit add layer mask. And there we go, that looks really good. I'm super stoked with how that turned out already. Now, same thing, I'm just going to click this button here to avoid linking. If this button is selected, what happens when I move is the whole top moves. Whereas if I unlink it and click on the clouds, I can just move the clouds without touching the layer mask, which means I can adjust where the clouds are without having any impact on the selection. So I might move them up just a little bit, somewhere around here, something like that. That looks pretty good. Now I do feel like the clouds are a little bit too strong and a little bit too contrasty, so I'm going to add an adjustment layer, brightness and contrasts. I'm going to hit the options key and make sure it's applying only to this layer. And I might bring the contrast down just a little bit, somewhere around here. There we go. So before and after. And if we look at the before right from the start, pretty cool image, but there's something missing. And now looks much, much better. So I'm just going to save this photo and send it back to Lightroom. And there we go, we're back in Lightroom. And again, I always like to make some final small adjustments. So I might pull the highlights down, push some contrast in there. I feel like the vibrance and the saturation is already really good, but I'm going to crop the photo for Instagram. So 4:5. Make sure the elephant is at the intersection of these two lines to make sure he's a point of interest. And there we have it. That looks super nice. I'm really happy with how this turned out. This is awesome. Okay, now third image, a little bit more complicated, a little bit more work, but this is going to look awesome. Now, so this photo right here was taken at sunset in Paris. Now, the problem was the sunset was really awesome. Like, we had some really nice golden light, like you can see here, but the sky was quite boring. So let's throw this one in Photoshop. I'm going to go photo, edit in Adobe Photoshop. Okay, so we're back in Photoshop. Now, for this sky, I'm going to be using this one here. Now this is pretty good because it's really punchy. We've got some nice clouds, light rays going on, and we can really feel that sunset vibe. It's a lot stronger than what we've got here, so we're going to use that. So as usual, I'm just going to drag this into Photoshop. And first step is I'm going to rescale it. Now with these cloud photos, sometimes the clouds are in landscape and your image is in portrait. Thankfully, we can just resize this quite easily like this. There we go. I might just bring the opacity down on this layer just so I can get a better idea of what I'm doing. So I want this section of clouds to be just on the top of this building. So I might stretch this out a little bit, something like that. Looks pretty good, I reckon. So I'm going to bring the opacity back up. Now I'm just going to turn off this layer real quick, hit this one. So again, super easy trick. I'm going to hit select, color range. Because the sky is all one same color and the bottom of the image is quite dark, this works really, really well. So I'm going to select a color range. The previous settings could work actually. Let's just hit OK. I'm going to click back on this layer here and hit the add layer mask, and boom, look at that. That looks awesome. I'm super stoked with this. So again, I'm going to unlink it so I can play around a little bit. I might move it maybe just a tad. There we go, something like that. I'm super stoked with how this looks right now. This is awesome. This has come out really, really nice. I'm actually impressed. I was going to do a whole demonstration on how sometimes you have to brush to make sure it looks perfect, but to be honest, this is fine as is. Really happy with this. So okay, zooming back out now. I feel like this image could use a little bit more punch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some light overlays. So if I go in my folders, and I know this one is a good one. There we go, number 10. All right, I'm just going to grab this, throw it in here. I'm going to set the blending mode to screen. Well, hey, you know, we've got light. So I want to add a little bit more light coming from the right of the image, where the sun is coming from. I'm going to make it bigger. And something like that. Boom, look at that. That is really, really cool. So what I always like to do is I like to select all the layers that I've made adjustments on and put them in a folder and call it edits. That way I can easily turn it on and off and see what I've done. So this is the before and this is the after. This is sick. I'm really, really happy, especially with these light rays, that soft light haze I'm getting from the right of the image. That looks really, really good. So again, I'm going to save this and send it back to Lightroom. Okay, we're back in Lightroom, and as you can see, I've got a bit of white clipping here, so I might just bring the highlights down just a little bit and maybe punch the contrast. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong one. Maybe punch the contrast a little bit. There we go. I might pull the shadows down, something like that. Okay, and we're going to crop this for Instagram as usual. And there we go, rule of thirds. Boom, that looks awesome. I'm super stoked with how this came out, and it was a really easy edit to do. Just a couple of clicks and it turned out perfect. So you could really do this over a wide variety of shots. I'm just going to give you a couple of examples of some of the ones that I've done it previously. Now, some of them do take a little bit more work. You might have to brush a little bit and play with the settings and try and blend them in, but the gist of it is you can really replace skies in most situations to bring your photos to life. It can be a really useful tool to make your photos pop. If you do it every single time, people might notice and you might end up using the same clouds twice, which has happened to me in the past, so be careful of that. In any case, I hope you found this useful. If you did, please leave a like on the video. It really helps me out. Drop me a comment, let me know what you want to see next and if you found this tutorial helpful. And if you're new to the channel, my name is Mark. I'm a photographer, videographer, and I teach you all the stuff that I know. So make sure to hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for a lot more videos coming soon. In the meantime, go replace some clouds. Have fun.